I'm Dave Prowse with the tech question of the day for April 19th, 2017, and here it is. Can this cause Windows 10 to fail to load properly? Can what you see here cause Windows 10 to fail to boot up and load properly? And I'll give you a moment to pause the video, and I'll be back with the answer in just a bit. And so here's the answer. The answer is certainly yes. Here we see that the voltage for this AAA battery is 1.27 or so. And that's pretty low. This should be rated at 1.5. It's a 1.5 volt battery. And basically, if it's a new battery, it should be around 1.6. And let's swap out the batteries here. And here's a new battery. You can see this is at 1.62. So 1.5, 1.6, you're in good shape. Okay, and at this point, I'll give the secret code for today, and that's 1.5 volt. That's the secret code. First person to put it in on Facebook gets a copy of my book, the A+ Exam Cram. And that's, again, 1.5 volt. Now, this is an issue. You can't have this low voltage. There's not enough electrical pressure for the batteries to work properly if it's this low. This is a 1.5 volt battery, and so it needs to test at 1.5 or 1.6. Once you get about 10% below the battery, what the battery should be, it's not going to work well, if at all. And so the actual problem here was these AAA batteries were in this wireless keyboard, and it caused a failure. The keyboard stopped working, and I checked the logs. It caused a cascading USB failure, which stopped Windows 10 from booting. And this kind of thing is actually kind of common. If you're using, say, a USB hub like this, a passive USB hub, and it's overloaded with devices, or if your USB cables are too long, or a mixture of the two, I use active hubs, and it still can happen. I've seen that too. And in this case, it's just the battery was not strong enough. Both batteries were down to 1.2 volts. So you want to test those and make sure they're at 1.5, 1.6. Test your batteries every spring. It is springtime where we're at here in Northeast United States. And, when springtime comes around, you find that batteries are suddenly discharged. You find that there's contraction and expansion. So you find chip creep and card creep. And sometimes things need to be taken apart and put back together, reseated. Batteries should be checked and or replaced because they can cause all kinds of issues. So it's a good time for maintenance. When the weather starts to change, when it starts to get a little more humid, a little warmer, that's a good time for maintenance. And, quote unquote, spring cleaning of all your tech stuff. And, you can do this yearly. Check your batteries every 6 months or so, really. And especially 9-volt batteries. They can go extremely fast. And so USB could be an issue with Windows 10, with other versions of Windows, and it can cause problems. You might get that black screen with the circle, the spinning circle, and nothing else happens. And what do? Well, sometimes just connecting devices to a different USB port can help. Or you can reduce the amount of USB devices or disconnect some and see if that fixes the problem. So there's a lot of possibilities with USB. The hubs, the length of the cable, the amount of devices, where they're plugged in on the system, USB 2.0 versus USB 3, and so on. And that's just one element of the spinning circle. You could have a spinning circle with a black screen or a blue screen, and it all could be different things. It could be a lot of different issues. It could be that Windows is trying to update and is failing. It could be that the Windows Update service really needs to be disabled to prevent issues with updates in some cases. Or it could be that Windows Update needs to be turned on and set to automatic. Automatic with delayed start. You don't know, and that's just scratching the surface. I just mentioned two possibilities, USB and Windows Update for the spinning circle. There's a lot of other possibilities with this. But you want to try to check the connections first. The simple stuff This way you're not spending too much time doing things like changing the registry or reinstalling Windows. And I've seen a lot of people come to me say, you know, I have this problem with this computer. I re-imaged it 3 times and it's not working. Well, it was a USB issue, and you just had to find the culprit. You know, why you would reinstall 3 times, I don't know. If it didn't work with once, then, you know, what's going to happen? But there's a lot of things to check with these spinning circles, and there's a lot of troubleshooting that can go on with that. Now, if you do get the spinning circle and you can't get into Windows, then you got a couple options. First of all, you want to get into your startup settings. And the startup settings in, you know, say Windows 10, Windows 8, Windows 7, they all work differently, but you want to try to get into them. And one of the things you can do is you can shut off the computer and turn it back on and hope that it saw that there was a failure, and it'll bring you to the startup settings. And then you got to click through to get to what you need. Safe mode might help you. You might need to get into the command prompt. For old school people who like safe mode, you normally would press F8 to get into that. But with Windows 8 and higher, that will not work by default. You have to add a command, a BCD edit command, to get the legacy boot menu policy, that text list. And I'll show that text on the screen here. And so you could try that as well, add that so you could get into safe mode. But again, if you're having trouble getting in at all, it could be an issue. You could boot with a disk if you have one, or other USB media, if possible, to try to get into those startup settings and into safe mode. Or use that option that I mentioned with the turning the computer off and back on. Or you may be able to actually remote into the system. As the system's on and the circle's spinning, you could try pinging it from another computer and then use remote desktop to connect. And if remote desktop is turned on the computer that's affected, you might be able to fix the problem there as well remotely, if you can get in as an administrator. So a lot of possibilities there, a lot of troubleshooting, but in this case, it was the batteries. And so you want to check your batteries. You want to make sure that those guys are replaced every 6 months to a year, and verify that everything is up and running, and do your spring cleaning, so to speak. So that's the tech question of the day. I'm Dave Prowse. If you have any questions for me, feel free to contact me at my website, davidlprowse.com.